Let's Get To presents Go Astros, a focus on H-Town hardball.
So we're back here on Go Astros, and it was a pretty good week for the Stros. They went 4-3, but Brian, one of the things that's gotten me the most kind of impressed is the overall record for this grueling stretch of games that there's now 3 games left. They've actually played pretty well for having had this big marathon.
Yeah, I mean, they've made their big move in the division to take over the lead of the division. It's still early. We'll see where that goes. But, they've had, what's likely to be one of their best months of the season here in May, despite playing. It'll end the AMB 33 games in 34 days. And I suspect they'll all really enjoy sleeping in on Thursday morning.
Andy, it definitely was better than the big road trip they had when the convention was here in 1992. Although that was fun because remember they wrote in the Chronicle like Biggio had his diary.
I went to the last game of that and got a poster which I had in my dorm room.
If you recall, though, as much hand wringing was happening around that 1992 road trip, the Astros were pretty bad in 1991. That was one of those years where I just hope they win one game out of each series, not get swept. That's what and in 92 with that road trip, they managed to be 500 on that road trip, which was a big, big deal for the level of talent that team had and foretold a little bit of the future. This was a little better than that, although you'd like not to have dropped 2 of 3 to the Red Sox. But I guess whatever we need to do to keep the peace in Brian's house, we'll do. So I think the Astros are very giving in that respect.
Well, I tell you what, though, for the Red Sox series, especially, like it didn't feel like the Red Sox were a team that was as bad as their record. And it just felt like something was got to give, right, Brian? I mean,
yeah, my hope a couple weeks before is we got to them before they started getting hot, and that didn't happen. And they've continued to play well since then because they're a better team than their record indicated. So yeah, we just sort of caught them on the bad sort of part of that. But as I mentioned before, we're entering into a stretch where they don't play a team in playoff position for about a month. So overall, they won the series at Washington. They won 3-4 against the Rangers. They've got more teams they should, that are beatable in the near future here. It's a time to win some games, and they're doing that.
The biggest thing I think over the last week, though, was actually Urquidy's start yesterday, despite my best attempts to jinx it, Brian, on Twitter. But Andy, what was different about him? He just seemed to me more efficient. He seemed to be, he's always in the zone, which can be his downfall. But overall, what did you see out of Urquidy yesterday?
That would be great if I remember what I said. Urquidy's got a piece of maturity that I think is coming on more and more. He's probably at the level of talent that he's going to be at for his career. He's not going to get appreciably better at his age, but he's got a pretty long runway. I think the benefit to Urquidy is that he throws strikes, like you mentioned, and it's fun to watch. It's not a slow game generally when he's pitching, but from a pitch selection and how he handled his third time through the order yesterday, you could tell that some of the things that our pitching staff is trying to communicate to him are starting to click. When it's going bad for him, it's very obvious what he's going to throw on the next pitch, and he doesn't have the kind of stuff to just blow by guys. It's got to be placement. It's got to be pitch selection. And when he's going well, which in general he does, that's what you see. It's just a good mix of pitches and saving things for certain situations, throwing a slider when you need to throw a slider versus throwing a fastball when they're expecting a fastball kind of thing. But he was really impressive against a Rangers lineup that can hit. So it was good. Certainly an improvement from what happened in Boston earlier in the week.
And I think another person that looked improved, Bregman looked a lot better yesterday, Brian. Overall, your impressions?
Yeah, I mean, Bregman has somehow become the whipping boy for having a bad week, which player's going to have. I mean, it's been kind of notable. I went and checked his numbers to make sure my impression wasn't off. And no, he's about 20%, his OPS plus is about 20% above average. One thing we all need to adjust to is the average for a hitter has gone down this year across the board. And we need to sort of adjust our expectations for that based on the new baseball. But he had a nice game on Sunday and was able to, have that RBI double. That was, I think, nice for his confidence. It's not the Bregman we saw in 2018 or 2019. But it is a Bregman who is a really effective player, particularly because he's still making really good decisions on when to swing and pitches. He's leading Major League Baseball in walks, and so again, not vintage Alex Bregman, but time for him to improve and particularly get his power numbers up.
Andy, you said something about if this was going to become a team that doubles people to death, you're okay with it. It does seem like the Astros maybe are making some adjustments to the fact that the ball doesn't fly the way it used to.
Well, let's be clear. I say a lot of things, and most of them don't come true. So I'm happy when one does. I think it's a team. The perfect adjustment to me yesterday was Alvarez's bomb to center field that was a double off the wall, but it was a double because he learned from what happened the last time. He thought it was a home run, and he hustled out of the box, and it was a stand-up double without a question.
I thought it was a home run off the bat.
I did too.
Fortunately, he did.
But he didn't take it for granted, which was the lesson learned. So, everybody who had consternation over that a couple of weeks ago can put up. The Astros in the last week and a half have moved from 18th in OPS in major leagues to 7th. And that's due to slugging a lot better because they're still not getting on base at the pace that we expect them to. They're like 18th or 19th in on base percentage. So they're hitting the ball and they're not relying on the home runs. So even though your slugging percentage is going up, that isn't necessarily because you're hitting home runs, but they are taking a lot of extra bases. They are being really aggressive. Sometimes, like yesterday with Pena, it doesn't always work out. And that's part of being aggressive on the base pass. But I think you're starting to see them adjust, and their run scored per game is going up. Their OPS is going up because of it. The teams that are going to be slow to adjust, and I think that's one of the issues the Red Sox have had up to this last week, was they're very slow to adjust to the fact the ball just isn't traveling the way it used to. Astros are smarter than the Red Sox. I said it. So I think that it's good, and I think we have a bunch of guys who are multiple enough in their offensive approach that they can adjust and they can deal with different baseballs, different field conditions, different whatever. Altuve, I think, is famous for being able to give the team what it needs, and so you're going to see a lot of guys up and down the lineup, Brantley, Alvarez, Bregman, who are going to stop trying to worry about launch angle and worry about putting the ball in play, and that's starting to come to pass.
It's almost like that might be what Major League Baseball had in mind in the first place, Brian.
It's a happy accident, but I'm not willing to give Major League Baseball, like I said, any credit for getting anything right.
Brian?
The big turn in the Astros offense from, the frustrating years to, one of the best offenses in baseball and starting from 2017 on has been their ability to make contact to avoid strikeouts. And hey, that's a good strategy in any particular time period. It's a particularly better strategy when you have, with the current ball, getting more balls in contact, hitting more line drives. They're very capable of doing that. And we're seeing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just going to make for an more, I think it's a more exciting brand of baseball, personally. We still are suffering for some weird Dusty Baker decisions. And I think part of that was seen last night with Blake Taylor getting into a little bit of trouble. And then we went to Presley, and it seems like what I would have done, because you don't want Presley going back to back yet, is I would have given Montero the 8th because he only had to get one out in the 7th, and then maybe Stanek in the 9th. But it does seem like, I guess there's only 3 games left in this stretch, but it did feel like it was another little weird Dusty Baker bullpen thing, Andy.
Well, and, we talk about there only being 3 games left in this 33 games and 34-day stretch, and they're against a Cleveland team that's not great. They're middle of the road, a little bit under 500, but a good week would put them squarely in the AL Central conversation. It's weird from a perspective that even if we had an off day today, he'd still use the pitchers in a weird fashion, like, well, I can't burn somebody, or I can, just depending on how which way the wind is blowing. I don't agree with Presley being put in that situation yesterday. I'm glad he got the double play ball. it got out of the jam, but I don't agree that he should have been in the game in the first place. I was enthused the start of the appearance before because he was hitting 95, 96. He had a sequence of 95, 96, 95, which he hadn't thrown that hard all year. So, but he comes out the next day on Sunday and is throwing a bunch of sliders because there were runners on base and he was throwing from the pit, from the stretch. And it's just a weird situation to put him in. I don't know why you only use Montero for one batter. He's a guy who is younger and, appreciably a little bit healthier than Presley is right now, who still appears to be managing through the knee pain. You've got other options in the bullpen. That's the other piece I don't get. You've got other guys besides the 2 or 3 that he wants to pitch. And it's, I've said this probably every week that we've done this show. It literally is this weird idea that he's got 13 pitchers, but he only wants to use 4 of them. And then all of a sudden he remembers, oh, I've got 5 other guys in the bullpen. Let's pitch them all at once. And they haven't had appearances in a while and they struggle. And it feels like we're setting up for that again, even though the competition's getting a little bit better in our favor in the next week or 2. So it's dusty. And we can sit and tilt at the windmill of what if. I love that Twitter thinks that AJ Hinch is going to opt out of his contract after the end of the season and we're going to hire him back because that's where we were about a week ago. I don't know what Twitter is going to do, frankly, after this week because all the whipping boys have started to hit. So Gurriel's not being DFA'd. Bregman evidently is not going to be DFA'd. So I guess we're going to go back to picking on Martin Maldonado, who, by the way, had his best week as an Astro probably since the 2019 season. So good for him. He had 4 hits.
Part of why he's not using as many guys in the bullpen is because he's getting really good starting pitching. And he's not had a game recently. Didn't have to have a game this week where he had to, particularly against the Rangers, where he had to use 4 or 5 bullpen guys for 5 innings. And so they've been mostly close games. So I sort of define this as it's a good problem to have that he's not pitching Seth Martinez enough to be ideal for Seth Martinez.
But we also haven't seen Brian Abreu in a couple of days. Like all of a sudden that guy gets on a run and he disappears. I find the disappearing act frustrating. Ryan Presley on the radio saying, yeah, well, it's tough to go 7 days without pitching. Well, there's no excuse to go 7 days. There just isn't. And we saw it. We've seen it since Dusty's been here where we don't hear from guys for 10 days and then they get in, they're rusty and they don't. I think you have to realize from now we have good starting pitchers. So let's manage their workload.
I mean, especially if you've got a closer who's a little bit gimpy, why does he, maybe it's not Seth Martinez, but maybe you do use Montero a little bit more. Maybe you do go to Brian Abreu. Maybe there are other guys in that bullpen that are healthy that need the work. This is the frustration with Dusty as manager. And I would guess it's the frustration you had if you were a Cubs, Giants, or Reds or Nationals fan, is that he forgets that he has guys or doesn't want to use guys. And then to Jim's point, they get in games and they're rusty. They don't have the effectiveness they need to have. It's a blind spot that Dusty has. And it's just unfortunately something we have to live with for at least the rest of the season.
Brian, I'm sorry. I did cut you off on your explanation. I apologize.
Abreu's got 17 2/3 innings pitched. That's 1 1/3 innings below the leader in the bullpen, which is tied with Maton. So Dusty's distributing the innings relatively evenly, at least among some of his top arms. And, regardless of sort of how Dusty's doing, the bullpen's been doing a great job and has I think the lowest ERA in the American League so far.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the results are there. I guess what should we look forward to? We don't play the Angels for a long time, it looks like. So there really is the opportunity to kind of just keep racking up wins and not even worry about looking at standings right now.
Hey, we have a healthy diet of Mariners and A's coming up. And if you look at the rest of the division, that's a good place to be for the next several games. So I'm looking forward to the Astros continuing. We've got past the 11 games over hump. We're now 12 games over 500. It's a time for the Astros to pad some wins and keep going. So I'm looking forward to it.
I'll make a quick Mariners comment. I'm on Scott Service job watch. He may not be manager for much longer if this keeps up.
Yeah, I mean, definitely they build all that expectations from last season. They theoretically improved the team, but I think everybody saw that they were playing over their skis last year.
Well, I think that's a shame too, because to the point, the three of us who, you could probably take our collective baseball knowledge and put it in the Dixie Cup, all said this is probably a year they're going to take a little bit of a step back because they played way over their skis in 2021. And that's what's happened so far. Kellenek's been sent down. Jose Rodriguez has not been everything that he was advertised to be yet, which is normal when a guy gets brought up. So that would be disappointing because I think Service is a good manager.
I do too. Well, that will wrap us up this week. We'll be back. Actually, not even next week. We're going to take next week off because it is Memorial Day. And then we will be back in 2 weeks, hopefully with the Astros with a little bit more comfortable lead in the division. Until then, guys, go Astros.
Hey, next Monday, instead of listening to us, you can look at the standings. Go Astros.
Go Astros, no camo hats.
Go Astros is a presentation from Twitchy Dolphin Media and part of the Let's Get To Baseball Network.